February 19th, 1982, a quiet Friday morning in Brighton, New York, was shattered by a horrific discovery. Inside a seemingly ordinary suburban home lay a scene of unimaginable violence. The victim was Cathleen Krauseneck, a vibrant 29-year-old woman. She was found in her bedroom, brutally murdered. The location was the couple's residence on Greymoor Lane. It was a place that should have been a sanctuary, not a crime scene. Cathleen was killed by a single devastating blow to the head. The weapon was an axe. Investigators would later explore a potential motive. Cathleen had reportedly discovered her husband, James Krauseneck Jr., had lied about completing his Ph.D. A grim discovery was made by James Krauseneck Jr. himself upon returning home from work that afternoon. The initial scene was shocking. The axe remained embedded in Cathleen's head, a chilling testament to the brutality of the attack. Present in the home, but miraculously unharmed, was the couple's 3-year-old daughter, Sarah. She was found in her room, seemingly unaware of the horror that had unfolded. James Krauseneck's initial account to police was simple. He claimed he found his wife dead upon his return. The scene appeared to suggest a burglary. Broken glass, scattered items like purse contents and a tea set, and an axe found near a door seemed to indicate a forced entry and ransacking. However, a critical detail emerged quickly. Despite the appearance of a break-in, nothing of value seemed to have been stolen from the home. Please like and subscribe if you're new to the channel. From the outset, investigators focused their attention on the husband, James Krauseneck. This is a common starting point in domestic homicides, but it quickly became the central theme of the inquiry. The investigation in 1982 was significantly hampered by the limitations of forensic technology at the time. Advanced techniques we rely on today, like DNA analysis, were not yet available tools for crime solving. Police searched for evidence of an intruder. Crucially, they found no fingerprints or other physical evidence suggesting another person had been inside the home. James Krauseneck's behavior following the discovery raised questions. While initially cooperative, he left town for Michigan with his daughter and parents less than 24 hours after the murder, without informing the police. 10 days after his wife's death, James Krauseneck hired a lawyer. This is a right, of course, but in the context of his sudden departure, it added another layer of suspicion for investigators. Determining the precise time of death proved challenging. The autopsy provided a broad range, estimated between 4:30 a.m. and 7:30 a.m. This made it difficult to definitively place James Krauseneck at home or away during the critical period. Without direct evidence linking James to the crime and with the uncertainty surrounding the time of death, the investigation eventually stalled. The case went cold, leaving the murder of Cathleen Krauseneck unsolved for decades. Decades passed, but the murder of Cathleen Krauseneck remained an open wound for her family and a persistent mystery for law enforcement. Then, starting around 2015, the case was officially reopened. The Brighton Police Department, determined to seek justice, revisited the cold case files. They were not alone in this renewed effort. The Federal Bureau of Investigation, the FBI, provided significant resources and expertise to assist the local police in their renewed investigation. A new team of detectives meticulously reviewed the original files, photographs, and limited physical evidence from 1982. They looked at everything with fresh eyes and modern understanding. A key focus of the renewed investigation was the apparent burglary scene. Investigators increasingly concluded that the scene had been staged. Their reasoning was based on the lack of theft and specific details, such as items being scattered but not truly ransacked, suggesting a deliberate attempt to mislead. To address the critical issue of time of death with modern expertise, the prosecution consulted a renowned forensic pathologist, Dr. Michael Baden. Dr. Baden analyzed the original autopsy findings and scene details. He offered a more precise opinion, determining the time of death was approximately 3:30 a.m. This estimated time of death was hours before James Krauseneck claimed to have left for work that morning, placing him potentially at home during the fatal attack. With advancements in forensic science, evidence collected in 1982 was sent to the FBI lab for DNA testing. This offered a new hope for finding definitive links or ruling out individuals. The DNA results, however, did not provide a smoking gun. no DNA evidence directly tied James Krauseneck or any other specific individual to the crime scene items that were tested. Despite the lack of direct DNA evidence, the prosecution highlighted the significance of what was not found: the absence of DNA from any unknown individuals within the home. As the renewed investigation focused on James Krauseneck, the defense prepared to challenge the narrative. They proposed an alternative suspect, arguing the real killer was someone else entirely. The defense pointed to Ed Larrabee. He was a violent serial predator with a history of rape and other heinous crimes, and he had lived nearby the Krauseneck home at the time of the murder. Larrabee had a disturbing history. Before his death in 2014, he had confessed to multiple crimes, including, at one point, claiming responsibility for killing Cathleen Krauseneck. The defense built their argument for Larrabee based on several points. He lived close by, he was out of prison and active in the area in 1982, and he had confessed to other murders, including that of Stephanie Kupczynski in 1991. They argued that Larrabee's violent nature and proximity made him a far more plausible suspect than the victim's husband. The prosecution and investigators, however, largely dismissed Ed Larrabee's confession regarding Cathleen Krauseneck. They had examined his claims previously. They cited significant inconsistencies between Larrabee's confession details and the actual facts of the crime scene. For instance, Larrabee reportedly described the victim incorrectly. Furthermore, Larrabee's typical modus operandi involved sexual assault, which was not a factor in Cathleen Krauseneck's murder. The method of killing, a single axe blow, also did not align with his known patterns. Investigators concluded that while Larrabee was undoubtedly a violent criminal responsible for other terrible acts, he was not our bad man in the context of the Krauseneck murder. They believed his confession to this specific crime was unreliable. 40 years after the murder, James Krauseneck Jr. finally stood trial in 2022. The case against him hinged primarily on two key elements: the time of death and the staged nature of the burglary. The trial featured conflicting testimony regarding the crucial time of death. Dr. Michael Baden testified for the prosecution, offering his opinion of a 3:30 a.m. death. The defense countered with their own expert, Dr. Catherine Maloney, who disagreed. She testified that based on the available evidence from 1982, it was impossible to pinpoint the time of death with such precision. The prosecution presented detailed evidence supporting their claim that the burglary scene was staged. They highlighted inconsistencies like the lack of true ransacking, cash being left behind, and the specific, almost deliberate placement of certain items. Another piece of evidence presented was a faint shoe print found on a garbage bag at the scene. Investigators believed it was left by a boat shoe similar to those James Krauseneck owned, suggesting it was used to hold the bag open while staging the scene. The defense vigorously highlighted the absence of direct evidence. They reminded the jury that there were no eyewitnesses, no fingerprints, and no DNA directly tying James Krauseneck to the act of murder itself. After hearing weeks of testimony and reviewing the evidence, the jury began deliberations. Their decision would bring a sense of closure, one way or another, to a 4-decade-old mystery. The jury deliberated for less than 10 hours before reaching a verdict. The verdict was guilty. The jury found James Krauseneck Jr. guilty of second-degree murder in the death of his wife. Reports indicated the jury's reasoning focused heavily on the staged burglary scene and the lack of evidence pointing to anyone else being in the home. They reportedly disregarded the conflicting time of death testimony as less conclusive. Following the conviction, James Krauseneck Jr. was sentenced. The judge imposed a sentence of 25 years to life in prison, the maximum allowed for the charge. Despite the verdict and sentencing, James Krauseneck continues to maintain his innocence. He denies any involvement in his wife's murder. His daughter, Sarah Krauseneck, has publicly supported her father throughout the process. She firmly believes he is innocent and was wrongly convicted. For Kathy's family, the verdict brought a measure of relief after 40 years of waiting for justice. Her father, Bob Schlosser, expressed his belief in James's guilt and the appropriateness of the outcome. James Krauseneck's defense attorneys expressed disappointment and strong disagreement with the verdict. They believe he was convicted based on a presumption of guilt simply because he was the husband. The defense team and James Krauseneck's family have stated their intention to appeal the conviction. the legal battle over Cathleen Krauseneck's death is likely not yet over.